Bring in more revenue while saving money and differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack vying to win those guests by becoming more environmentally friendly. We will show you how easy it is and how cheap it can be, if not free, and share all the opportunities available. So join us each week as we take another step along the green path. That's one more step to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack. Proudly sponsored by the Book Direct Show, a green vacation rental conference. Learn more at bookdirect.show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Green Path. Today, my special guest is Graham Donoghue from Sykes Holiday. Hello, Graham. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm really good today. Thank you. It's a special day for me today.
Is it? What's happening?
I've just taken delivery of 25,000 bees.
Oh, wow. Bees. That's amazing. Okay. So
we could talk about that forever, but yeah, no, it's so I have bees, I have chickens, I have goldfish, I have cats, I have dogs, and I have frogs in my little nature reserve, my back garden.
All right. So it's the Donoghue Zoo. Okay.
It is like a zoo. Yeah. So yeah, super excited. I've been waiting for these bees for quite some time.
Wow.
And they're all outside, just they're reorientating themselves around our garden.
Incredible. Okay. So, I was going to ask you about the Green Path and about your story and whether you actually becoming environmentally friendly with the Sykes Holiday aspect or as a company or personally. Actually, I didn't realize that was going to be one of the choices. So let's start. So is it just a personal thing, or are you greening Sykes Holiday as a company and the properties?
It's both. It's as a company and as a group. Yeah. Just to step back, remember our business is growing very fast, and we're a collection of different brands, and all of those brands really have to have a purpose that is not only about creating value for shareholders and multiple stakeholders, but also as considering the impact that we have on the wider planet. So at a company or a group level, we feel it's important, and it's a journey that we've just started really in the last 12 months, but we've done a lot of work and we're on it. But that then bleeds into what does it mean as a property manager? What does it mean as a property owner? What does it mean as an employee? What does it mean as a shareholder? And then actually how people then take that out in some of the skills we give them, and they do it in their everyday life, how they can learn new skills or think about the impact they can have. Because the journey we're going on, what I've discovered in the last 12 months is when you're a big organization like us that takes millions of people on holiday, you just the ecosystem that exists, and who you touch and who you interface into, particularly as you go down to supplier level, it's enormous. Yeah. And every one of them needs to be educated, needs to be updated, and needs to understand that, if we don't do some things, if we don't think about what we're doing and, move beyond just profit, we're all a bit screwed.
So as the group, that's the big umbrella. And so that's where the message is starting, and it's going to trickle down all the way down to staff and suppliers even, and the guests.
To everybody. Because, our business is quite simple. Like we start with, we call it the house model, and the roof of the house is your purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? What's your sort of a module? What gets you going? And every business unit sort of has their own version of it. The group has its own version. Then what do we need to do by when? And then what are the key initiatives that are required to execute that? Then how are we going to behave? So in all of the business units that we have a generally common purpose that is linked to taking people on holiday, making sure they have a really good time, but actually doing it with a lens through how do we look after the environment? How do we look after communities? How do we do this with a social responsibility? So, and it's the difference between a vision and a purpose for us as a business. And so that bleeds right the way through the organization, and everybody, we talk about it constantly. Everybody thinks about it, and, allows us to make choices.
Can you share like something that you would do at each level? Well, like what are the initiatives or what are the steps you've taken or are taking?
Yeah, so lots. So let's just start with measure what matters is a principle we live behind. So if you're going to put something into your purpose, you have to think about, well, what does that really mean? How do you measure it? And then how do you make sure there's a constant communication narrative? So as a simple example, when we talk about environment, we talk about communities in terms of giving back. Well, we have to do some stuff. Well, what do we have to do? Well, we have to think about the impact we can have, and we need to build the concept of impact into people's objectives. Now, that could be, how do we do more volunteering? So we have 2,000 employees, almost. Probably have by now. I was at 1,800 this morning. It's probably 2,000 now. So we have roughly 2,000 employees. So it's a bit like, well, these people have skills and they want to give back to the community. So how do we make sure that all these people have the ability to give back? So we allow people, we target 4,000 community days in terms of volunteering days, which we obviously fund, annually. And so it's making sure that we create these initiatives where people can go out and they can volunteer, or they can use their skills. If you're a web designer, can you help a local charity? If you're a good example local to me, I'm in the UK, and in Cheshire, we have a big zoo, Chester Zoo, near where we work. We've had 200 people down at the zoo, learning how to feed the animals and stripping bark off trees and so forth, and it's sort of a giving back to different communities. So within our model, we call it the impact pillar. What is it we're going to do? How do we think about giving back to communities? How do we think about the volunteering? How do we think about supporting families who maybe couldn't afford to go on holiday, but we can work with our owners who have properties that are not always full, to take people on holidays, to give something back to those people? How do we facilitate that? We're huge fans of bees and trees in our business. So we do sponsor lots of beehives, and we educate everybody around the bees and how important the bees are. And if we didn't have bees, what would happen? Obviously, as part of our business, we own 700 premium cabins in forests. It's part of Forest Holidays. So how do we educate everybody about, the impact we can have about sustainability, of looking after our forests, about planting more trees, about carbon, and what the impact of carbon, how that. So I mean, the list goes on in terms of what we're sort of doing. And one of the things we have been doing is to glue all this together, is going through a process with an organization called B Corp, which some of the listeners will have heard of it. B Corp is a brilliant framework that allows us to sort of say, okay, how do we think about our people? How do we think about environment? How do we think about governance in terms of being a well-run business? How do we think about communities and the social impact we have? And we are classed as an organization with a significant environmental footprint, just because of the size of business we have. That means that when we're talking to Google, we have to ask them and understand what their policies are around some of the things they do. When we're talking to all of our property owners, 20 odd thousand properties, we try to educate them around things like installing EV chargers and the benefit of EV chargers versus the types of cleaning products that they may be using. And then we work with suppliers to try and find discounts and promotions and education. And that filters right the way through.
Yeah. So you are actually educating all of your property owners to try and move them towards a cleaner sort of property, a cleaner, greener kind of property.
Yeah, because, ultimately, I think it is a challenge because, I'll give you practical examples here. One of the challenges we're seeing at the moment is a lot of people are driving electric cars across the UK, and they're driving to locations, and not a lot of properties have electric vehicle charge points. So people are using, 3-pin plugs, plugging it into extension leads, dragging it into their car and then trying to charge up the car. And that costs a lot of money, and it makes owners quite grumpy because, do they or don't they charge for it? Do they say something? Typically electricity is included in the price. But then to install an electric vehicle charger that has a meter built into it, it's about £800. There's an outlay of a cost. So, and will they get that return? is it easy for customers to search for electric vehicle chargers on the website? So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to sort of try and educate and update. And some owners are facing into it and they get it. Some are a bit like, well, that's more cost. Who's going to pay for that? Should I charge for that? Shouldn't I charge for that?
Yeah, but can't you sell that as you're going to then target a niche market who are looking for these EV chargers, and we could be bringing you more revenue because you're going to be servicing a niche market?
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely, and that is, but it is on that curve. At the moment, it's not. It is still quite sort of a niche, but it's definitely direction of travel, and we need to educate and we need to sort of support. And it is good because there's a consumer problem here. They have electric vehicles, need to charge them. Yeah. There's an owner issue. Owners are fed up that people, plugging in their, 3-pin plugs that cost a fortune to charge a car versus the outlay investment of putting in, £700-800 sort of a charger. So just one example. So we do. The answer is yes. We do have to educate, and we're trying to educate and update. And make people aware of everything that we're sort of doing, and also asking our owners for help, because a lot of them do have properties available and they want to give back. So we go to our owners and we say, could you give us a week in your property that we can work with a charity, and we work with a collection of charities to then do like a matching service, people who can't afford to go away or need some respite. How do we match those two things together?
So between the property owners and staff, are you seeing a lot of embracing of this sort of greening and giving back and that sort of thing? Are they being convinced to come on board, or is it still a little bit of a pushback? I mean, with the property owners, some of them, yes, obviously pushing back, but are some of them going, yeah, I'm in?
Look, from an employee perspective, it is almost like a retention tool. That's the way to think about it. Yeah. It used to be people come and they can work for our business because we have a brilliant culture and we're all together. Well, we're not all together now because we're all working from home. It used to be you get, your nice posh coffee free of charge. You're sort of, into the office, or you come and use our gym. People now, particularly Gen Zs, which is a big part. If anybody who employs a lot of people in digital and marketing, they are almost asking, well, how are you giving back? What are you doing? How can I get involved in that? And it almost becomes a key opportunity for us to talk about what we're doing and actually retain talent as well. So 100%. But what you have to do is you have to educate everybody, and then you have to lay the breadcrumbs. What we initially found is when we just said, yeah, everybody, you can go do some volunteering. Just log it in your log it in the personal account you have. That you've done a volunteering day. Great. And it didn't really work. What we had to do, what we had to do is say, we have an opportunity next week to go and plant up 10,000 trees. Who wants to do it? And when we started to do that, it was like, yeah, I'll go and do it. So we've had to spend a bit of time. So what we did is we've hired, and we have a few of these now, we call them impact managers. And the sole job in the organization is to help drive that agenda. And to educate, and then to sort of go out, and then we've created roles in the business, ambassadors for different areas. It could be about recycling, it could be about educating people about a particular topic, and that's how we use that community to sort of try and educate people. And then we build it into people's objectives as well. So people are embracing it, but we've had to do a little bit of sort of, show them where the smoke is going, or lay the breadcrumbs, and then people are getting to it. And more and more, it's growing because people sort of, they're going, and it's like a dopamine or serotonin type hit. Yeah. They're like, this is brilliant. We love it. What an amazing day we had. Yeah. If you follow us on LinkedIn or social media, you see everybody's posting pictures of looking after, animals at the zoo, or planting trees, or cleaning a river, or cleaning a beach, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Bob Garner had this analogy about becoming sustainable and environmentally friendly. It's like eating a packet of chips. When you start eating one chip, you just want more and more and more. And then another property manager I spoke to, she said she completely agreed. He completely agreed. And it's great because once it's like going to the gym, that first step, it's like, oh, that felt good. And you get the ball rolling. So we all just need to find a way to help people take that first step along the green path.
and the thing here, I keep talking about this, that a lot of people think ESG or doing green or whatever you want to call it, or sustainability. I'm not a fan of some of these words because of what they mean, but a lot of people think that it costs money. And we can't really afford to do it, and it's nonsense, absolute nonsense. I firmly believe, from all the evidence that I have, that you can balance. I mean, the phrase is triple bottom line. You can balance people, planet, and profit. You can think about how you balance those three things together. And there's so much evidence, there's so much documented, particularly around B Corp. Companies that are joining this sort of a movement's a horrible phrase, but joining it and being part of it and embracing it are doing incredibly well and outperforming peers and outperforming the market. Because it creates a bit of a flywheel effect. People are getting involved. They want to be part of an organization that has more meaning to it. You have less people who are sort of, calling in sick. You have better retention of your employees. You have happier employees. You have happier engagement. That bleeds down into, say, your owners. It bleeds down into your multiple stakeholders, including shareholders. Now, if you're a business that has shareholders, bless them. I can't think of many shareholders that I've spoken to who don't have this on their agenda, or are creating funds available to lend to businesses that are, considering the impact that they have. Even some of the big banks, the national banks across the UK, they have preferential rates for businesses because everybody knows we have to have an agenda and we have to sort of, we have to do more.
It is something. What's that?
What's not to love?
It is something that, people are putting off, but eventually, you're going to have to embrace this, and you are going to have to start taking those small steps. So, now is the time to start, listening to podcasts, taking the small steps, learning and actioning it. So it's a good time.
And that's the key thing. It's educate, learn, action, embed, and just communicate. I'll tell you one thing is, if you do it seriously and you start this journey, you'll be amazed at the things you uncover. So there's obviously such a thing as the unconscious bias and how you think about, say, diversity and inclusion. And I like to think that everybody is open to join our business. It's about hiring the right talent. That's exactly how I think and how I behave. But we were challenged by some third parties who came and just looked at the way that we did things, looked at the way that we wrote job posts, looked at the way that we shot TV commercials, looked at some of the images and so forth. And the question was, does this feel like a really diverse organization in the way that you sort of present themselves? And so, is there a bias in the organization? We certainly don't mean it to be, but people looking outside in easily say, well, it's all, white, middle-aged sort of English, British people, whatever it may be. Even today, I was sent an index that we produce every year around, trends and so forth. And we have case studies in it. And you just look at the case studies and you think, again, are we really, being representative enough? So point being is eyes wide open, and you can be quite challenged. Carbon is another good example. We don't have a significant carbon sort of a footprint as a business. But if you were to extend the view that says people who are traveling with you and staying in properties, and that became your overall impact footprint, is much bigger. And then you start thinking, well, first of all, it's not about offsetting, it's about reducing the carbon. So what can we do? And then it's, how do we educate all of these suppliers and everybody who's going on holiday? If you've got 60 to 70,000 people every week traveling with you up and down highways, which is what we have, how do we help educate, and how do we help educate the owners? You think of the number of washes that are going on for linen, on a weekly sort of a basis, and so forth. Now, so there are some things in there where you go, oh, that's quite interesting. It's not really what I thought. Unsurprisingly, we scored incredibly well on governance. Well-run company, good sort of a governance structure. But when it came to environmental and I guess communities, not so good. We're one of the biggest employers in our local area, but do we give back? Do we sort of, do we support the way that we should be supporting? We don't, and we should, and we do, and we know. So we have to drive that program.
Yeah, yeah. With the properties that are taking those small steps to becoming a bit more environmentally friendly, you're obviously promoting that in the listings, right?
No, but it's what we should be doing.
Yes, because I was going to ask you, are you having guests that are asking for environmentally friendly homes? They are actually asking. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's another good example of what we want to do, what we are doing are different things, and we've got it on the agenda and it's on the roadmap. But yeah, today it's the paradox of choice. You cannot go in and say, show me properties that have green credentials. What is your green credentials? How are you scoring these properties?
Yeah.
Even searching for EV chargers is not easy. It's quite a difficult thing that you have to do like a free text sort of search. So there's a whole program of work that we have to do. And I think what we're trying to do and want to do is to almost promote and reward properties that are behaving in a particular way, and owners, I should say, that are also behaving in a particular way, because we should be sort of treating them as this is best in class. This is sort of the standard that you should be adhering towards. So we have this concept of a boost in our algorithm. I won't go into the ins and the outs of how our algorithm actually works, because we would need 2 hours. But we can say to owners, if you do this, we can do this as a result of boosting your property and giving you more visibility. And hopefully more visibility leads to more bookings and or more revenue.
Yeah. Look, in terms of a property being, completely carbon neutral, I think as a guest, as long as the guest can see that the owner is starting the steps, doing something towards greening the property or making it carbon neutral, that's almost enough. Because how long is that list? Can you be completely carbon neutral like that? You can't be getting an owner to go from 0 to 100 quickly. So I think as a guest, if you can see that the owner is making the steps towards, they're on a journey towards greening it, then that's already enough, I would say.
It's small steps. I'll give you a simple example. So at the moment, if we've got a lot of properties, and some of them are large houses that maybe are 5 bedrooms, sleep 10, and if you're a party of 6 and you're in a property that sleeps 10 and you don't use 4 of the beds, at the moment when we're cleaning the property, we clean everything, including all those beds that haven't been used. Because at the moment we don't know what beds have been used and not been used. It's not always easy to tell. So a simple idea would be, can we provide the guests with a little, laminated or a card or something where they can just say, yeah, this hasn't been used, hasn't been touched. That's 4 less beds, better for the cleaning company, better for the owner because it's less charge and all that. We don't do that, but we should do that. But and it's just working through those little examples. Whereas at the moment we're like, well, everything has to be clean to a standard and everything has to be checked and so forth and that, but it doesn't have to be. I would say, there's not many things that the hotel industry do better than us as STR, but, they have been doing that, in terms of, do you need this to be refreshed every day? And, do your towels need to be changed every day? They've been doing that for quite some time.
Yeah. Now, have you actually seen results? Or, no. How are you sharing what you're doing?
Well, we produce every year. We have to produce, which is audited, an impact report. And so that's a very open. So if you go to the careers website of, say, Sykes as an example, it talks about all the things we're doing. If you go to social media, you can see we share a lot through our impact managers what's going on and how we're giving back. But the key linchpin is the way that, particularly with B Corp, what it does is you get a score out of 200. And to become a B Corp, you have to have 80 points. And you have to be audited to ensure you keep delivering the standard you need to be living. And you have to showcase what you're doing. And it's called it's like a manifesto, like an impact manifesto. And you have to talk about what you're doing, and you have to make promises, and you have to make commitments, and then you get measured against it. So, it's very visible. Now that's what B Corp, it's a process you go through. But even if we weren't through this B Corp process, we would still want to be doing that. And anybody could do it. You don't have to be part of B Corp, although I would encourage people to do it. So really it's about just creating that visibility and educating. And then because it's a key pillar of the way that we grow our business, which you may or may not be able to see behind me, probably can't read it. Because it's in there, it means we measure it and we talk about it, and we have steering committees and we have people talking about it. And then also, we're also a member of UK for Good, which is a charitable organization that's set up for businesses like us that are trying to educate other businesses to think about sustainability and to think about their how they're behaving and how they're sort of balancing that triple bottom line. And that's very visible in terms of what we do. We spend a lot of time even lobbying government as well around changing things like the Better Business Act and changing how companies, the legal responsibility companies have to look at more than just profit. So all of that is all quite visible.
Yeah. Do you actually have a section? I should have done this homework. Have you got a section on your website that explains what Sykes Holidays does in terms of all of this at all levels? You share that?
Yeah, it's not as good as it needs to be and is going to be, but yes, and it's part of the recruitment process as well, as in recruiting owners, but also recruiting employees as well.
Yeah. Well,
it's not. The thing is, it's words are one thing, presenting it and so forth is one thing, but really it's about the action that you take. And the key thing for me is, are we doing stuff? And you're spot on. As a property manager, you don't need to say we're going to be carbon neutral tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. Just small changes make marginal gains. And if we all do small changes, if we all look after what we're doing, and just think about it and embed it into what we do in every day and talk about it, that's the start of a journey. Yeah.
Now let's forget about Sykes Holiday for a minute, and let's talk about Graham Donoghue Zoo. So what's your journey been like, and what are you doing?
Well, so first of all, my property is probably a good place to start. I have a house that I rent out. It's an eco house, and it's almost self-sufficient. It's not quite, and the reason it's not quite is it has a swimming pool, which I know sounds terribly ostentatious, but it has a swimming pool, and it's quite difficult to be like neutral. But so we have a property that has a wind turbine that generates 5 kilowatts of power. We have a 3-acre meadow that's full of wildflowers to sort of give back. We have a woodland that's protected and looked after. We have a full rain harvesting system that pretty much is used to water all the surrounding area and for the toilets and all the stuff that's going in the house. And we have solar, so we're using the sun to sort of heat. We have solar pads that heat water that we can use to heat the swimming pool. We have a mechanical air ventilation system, so we can keep the heat sort of, the heating off effectively. We have ground source, so the whole property is run by like an inverted sort of a ground source. So I'm not using, fossil fuels. What else have we got? It's obviously all underfloor heating, which is much better. It's all insulated to within an inch of its life. So it's a good example of a property. There's had a lot of investment to it, but actually there's probably not much more I could do. So we do that, and then when it comes to just what we're doing and where I am today in sort of a leafy Cheshire, we're huge gardeners as a family. We're quite sustainable in the way that we plant a lot of vegetables. We have a lot of fruit trees here. We try and grow as much as possibly can. I have chickens that give me at least 5 lovely eggs every single day.
Wow.
My bees have just been delivered, so hopefully have honey soon as well. And actually, just we try and make sure we think about things that we're doing. Now we don't, we have a nice life lifestyle. I drive an electric car, but I also need a non-electric car for anything that's more than 300 miles because my car this doesn't really do more than 300 miles, or I have to find a charging point as well. So on a journey, I think is probably the best way I would sort of describe it in terms of what I'm doing.
It sounds like a lovely journey too. Sounds like a lovely place. You should make
look, and I'm in a fortunate position that I can afford to do some of this stuff, because the other challenge is, the smaller things are free, recycling and stuff, but some of these larger things, it does require investment.
Yeah. But you do get a return on investment. I imagine, for the electricity, it's an investment to start off with, but eventually your bills are going to drop. So eventually you'll recoup the cost.
Yeah, and you have to look at it over a long term. It's a bit like bit like your pension fund, like you have to look at it over a long period of time. You're not expecting to get like a year one payback. And the technology is improving all the time. The capability is improving all the time. I mean, what most people are doing now on solar PV in particular is they're storing it in batteries, then they're using it at certain times of the day when it's more efficient for them to use it, as opposed to pushing it back into the grid, which is what used to happen, because you're not really getting the same return as well. So the technology is improving all the time, and costs are coming down.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I believe early on it was storing the solar power was the difficulty. Storing it and moving it was the difficulty. But now, that it is improving all the time, and it is going to get easier for us. That's great. And what a lovely way to end the interview. Anything else you want to add before we wind up?
No, look, I mean, look, I think you've said it. Just there's lots of research out there. There's lots of things you can sort of read, and don't get too sucked in by the people who are standing at the top of the mountain and preaching. I think all of this just starts with a bit of a journey. If you've got lots of employees, talk to your employees. If you've got lots of stakeholders, talk to your stakeholders, and just groundswell all the ideas of things that you can sort of do. Embed it into what you're doing every day and talk about it. And I think you'll be surprised at results.
Yeah, great. Well, Graham, thank you very, very much for your time. I know you're a very busy man. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye. Bye.